with ABM, it's viewed as maybe it's just ads or that are targeting specific accounts, but it really is very much multi-channel. So I'm going to have ads, but I'm going to have ads by different engagement levels for those accounts. A combination of like an ad roll as well as LinkedIn advertising, Google ads. I'm having that dedicated landing page. I'm having the sales resources.
Hello and welcome to the Health Tech Marketing Show. I'm your host, Adam Chirinas. Quick thank you to our sponsors from Healthcare Now Radio. This is the go-to platform for conversations that really matter in healthcare and healthcare IT. We love their support. And I tell you what, these guys cover everything in healthcare. And if you really want to kind of become an expert in the space, just listen to their radio show, check out their podcast network. And by the way, if you have a podcast like we do, I would seriously reach out to Carol and Roberta at Healthcare Now Radio about becoming part of their podcast network. We did it and it has dramatically expanded our reach. And so we're just delighted that the show is getting in front of more and more people. This episode is about one of my favorite subjects, and that's account-based marketing, ABM. But we're going to talk about some really practical ways that you can use it, particularly in our industry of healthcare technology, where sales cycles are eternal, everybody's involved with it, and it's really complicated. So Brianna does a lot of different things, and she'll talk a little bit about that. But her day job is she's the director of demand generation at Cohere Health, and they sell to the payer industry, which is the sort of, one of the toughest nuts to crack in healthcare. And we're going to dig into why ABM doesn't have to be complicated or expensive, and how things like just doing sort of simple one to few campaigns to a carefully selected handful of accounts can be really effective. And she'll talk a little bit about the tools that she uses, how that's all set up, the tactics. It's a really practical episode. So let's get on with the show. I think you're going to like to hear what Brianna has to say. Brianna, welcome to the show. So great to have you here. So let's start. Tell everybody a bit about yourself. You've got such an interesting background and what you do, and just tell everybody a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get into the questions.
Yes. Hi, it's so great to be here. So my name is Brianna Miller. I am currently the director of demand generation at Cohere Health. Above everything, I'm inspired by my daughter. I'm really passionate about helping other marketers find their purpose and passion in their dreams, as I hope to help her. I am an adjunct professor as well and a speaker. I love sharing my knowledge and sparking new ideas, and could talk marketing all day, every day. I've been in the healthcare technology space for over a decade, and I love to use data and creative strategies to really drive business-wide success. So I am a champion of collaborative approaches to marketing, breaking down departmental silos, because I don't think marketing should only live in marketing, to hopefully eventually make some real meaningful impact.
So let me guess, you're a mum, you got a full-time job with a very hot company, and you're an adjunct professor. And for anybody who's never looked at it, I looked at it like, oh, somebody said, I think it was a school I was involved with, so talked to me about, potentially becoming an adjunct professor, or whatever the step before that was.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, yeah, that sounds okay. What's involved with it? And then they told me, it's like, whoa, that's like real work. That's like a full-time job.
Yes, I'm very, very blessed. I love it. I'm at the University of Missouri, St. Louis, and they love to bring in real marketers and professionals into especially their intro classes for the different degrees, so people can actually learn what it means to do these different careers, versus sometimes when you're a student and you go into basic marketing or intro to accounting or whatever, you don't really get a good feel of what it is. And, is that a career path you want to go down? So that's how I got into it. And now it's become just a passion of mine. I think it fuels me to be a better marketer, because I learn from my students and I learn from the research I'm doing for my classes. And at the same time, I can actually go into the classroom and say, like, hey, we read this in the book. I actually did this today. Like this is something you will actually do.
Yeah.
Or maybe this is something I don't do, but a different type of marketer may do, because I've, found my unique path in marketing.
Well, that's great because my son got a degree in communications and marketing, but in particular focus on advertising at the University of Texas. This is about 15 years ago now. And he was telling me about what he was learning. I'm thinking like, wait a second, this is stuff that we were doing 20 years ago. They're really teaching in the rearview mirror. Anyway, let's get on to the main subject. We can talk for an hour about that.
We could.
Yeah. That's not why people are here, but they're here to talk about ABM. So you've been doing ABM in health tech for quite a while. So you got a good sense of what works, what doesn't work. But I actually want to get into like, what do you think are the big misconceptions about ABM in our industry?
So I think it is that there's one key way to do it. And a lot of people see like account-based marketing as doing like the one-to-one method. And while that can be very successful, it's also very, very costly. And I know most in our space are in very similar places with me with very long sales cycles and a lot of personas. And there is a time and place for one-to-one. But I found that actually there's a better way to use ABM and using a one-to-few strategy and actually kind of bucketing our accounts, because there is things that we can find that are similar between multiple accounts and the same message would apply, and we can customize it kind of in that way. So I think people often get a little scared of ABM thinking I have to do one-to-one and create new unique resources for every single account. And like, no, there's other ways that we could do this.
Yeah. And when you say one-to-few, how many accounts is a few?
So it's definitely going to depend on business to business. I think in our health tech space, it's going to range anywhere from like 5 to maybe 15, possibly more, because I've done things such as like just children's hospitals. That's going to be a bigger bucket, but it is still a few versus like if we're talking one to many, I'm thinking that's a sales force going after every SaaS company. That is a huge market versus us. We could be somewhere a lot smaller.
Yeah, I sort of think about our own experience with Health Launchpad, and some of our clients, we might be going after a one-to-many market of like 200 or 300, and then tiering, as you say, like a small number into clusters. Maybe it's based on size, maybe it's based on engagement, maybe it's based on whatever it's based on. But getting to a one-to-one is much more about relationships and about selling. One of the reasons why I think people have that misperception is that the original book, written by somebody called Bev Burgess, who's like a legend in ABM, she's amazing, is very much focused on one-to-one. But then if you listen to demand-based, it's more like one-to-many. So I think the really great observation, people are still very confused about that. Given the nature of healthcare, long sales cycles, lots of people involved, it's regulated, it's complex. So you've said before that ABM doesn't have to be complicated to be affected. So where do you see teams over-engineering ABM and hurting themselves in the way that they're approaching it? Yeah.
So in that idea, I think is that you have to create all new resources for every single campaign. And I don't think so. It would be great if we could all create unique white papers and case studies for every campaign that we run, but we also know that's just not a realistic world that we live in. So I'm going to try to utilize what I have and then create some things like a dedicated landing page just for that campaign that kind of becomes a resource hub. And that's something that I'm going to use from a marketing perspective in my emails and my ad campaigns, as well as allowing sales to leverage in their outreach, kind of a one-stop shop hub of just the messaging that speaks specifically to those accounts and the personas that we're targeting at those accounts. So instead of them having to jump around our site or lead them to a bunch of different places, we're using existing resources, but we're packaging them in a nice, pretty way.
I love that notion of a resource hub. Maybe can you go a level deeper and just kind of like give an example of like what would be on a typical resource hub?
Yeah, so I'm definitely it's going to be a little bit bigger of a landing page than say just like a traditional download one resource. I'm going to have my messaging match what I have in my emails and in my email templates for my sales team. So specific introduction message and whether it's features or pain points that I'm talking to. But I'm also going to put definitely a resource section, possibly more than one, something that's a little more high level, the blogs that are relevant to them specifically, as well as a resource section with information with webinars, white papers, case studies. Again, all very specific to them. They don't have to go searching through our website to find the content that makes sense to their particular problem. In some cases, depending on the campaign, I may also have even some sales resources on that page. I'm typically not having these pages in that case be like indexed by search engines because there may be, again, sales resources. But if that is something that's going to be really powerful, I'll use it in that way and add in some additional tools that the salespeople can direct people to. And then it becomes also a really good place that your contacts can then share just that page with other people at their organization versus being like, hey, let me send to the homepage. That could go down multiple paths.
Very helpful. Do you have any sort of data about the level of engagement and conversion rates of that type of a page versus, other pages on the site?
So I don't have the exact numbers off the top of my head, but I do know across the board, we get significant time on page with those. And I think that is because I'm not making them jump around. And I don't, I've gone back and forth on the idea of like a really long landing page and be like, that also goes against some best practices of making people scroll. But I think they'd rather scroll than click around and search. So that's where I know that we have much significantly higher time on page for those sites. And I also, for those pages, I'm also typically ungating resources because I know who I'm targeting with this campaign. I know who should be landing on this page. I'm okay if I'm ungating that webinar or that case study so that everything's easy to access.
Yeah. As well. Right. And can you track, if you're sending emails for something through like HubSpot, you can track actually who clicks and where they go. Are you doing that?
Yeah. So if it's a known contact that is coming through email or sales, doing some outreach and they're in our CRM, then I can track those individually. I can also use, if I'm using the landing page within ads, we use AdRoll, previously known as RollWorks, as our account-based marketing tool. And I can know what accounts. I may not know the exact person, but I'm targeting specific accounts and people at those accounts. And I can say, hey, organization X visited the landing page, stayed on for a while, and clicked this link. Yeah. So it's giving me at least some context for the sales team to be like, okay, maybe I should do some outreach because this is getting a lot of engagement from that account.
Yeah. We use a tool called Factors. Mm-hmm. And it's nice because it's kind of like allows you to sort of roll your own. And when we're working with a lot of clients that everybody has a slightly, different setup, it allows us to look at different channels so we can aggregate first party on-site, LinkedIn, programmatic, email as well. We can connect it out to HubSpot. So you can get that level, the sort of what you're talking about. But also the thing that's kind of neat is that it also, if you sort of tag the pages in a certain way, it'll tell you whether they're interested, what topics they're interested in. And so, because, you're getting down to a level of specificity there, but it might be like, well, they're more interested in solution A versus solution B, or, they're at this stage of the buyer journey. But it's, we found it's a really good solution for, just emulating a lot of what you can do with something like demand base, but at a fraction of the price. It is not, by the way, this is like this notion of unbundled ABM. It is not demand base. It is absolutely not that, but it is kind of cool that you can, it's a good kind of like my first ABM.
And I think that's a great point, actually, in regards to finding the right tool for you. Yeah. I came onto this role with Cohere in April, so I've been here, not even a year yet. And when I had previously used AdRoll at my last company, and then I came in, I wanted a clean slate of like which new company, what's the best solution for this company. And it did happen to again be AdRoll again, but look, because you need something that you can actually implement, you can use on a daily basis, gives you information that is usable. And like, I love of course, I'd love to use Sixth Sense or, Demand Maze or something like that, but it was budget and also bandwidth. Like, I don't have a whole team member that I can dedicate their whole time to really leveraging that size of a tool. Yeah. Maybe one day, but I need something that like is super efficient, gives me what I need, and my team can get in and out of it and leverage it really well.
You coined this absolutely awesome term called right-sized ABM. Just tell us more about that.
Yeah, I think some people get scared of ABM as well because they think they need these huge tools like a Sixth Sense, which again, awesome tool, but very expensive tool. And a lot of us in this space, and I'm sure many other spaces, are working with tighter budgets every year. And we're having to show more ROI. So when I think of the right ABM, it includes not just a one-to-one, one-to-few, one-to-many, like figuring out which that is, but also finding the right tools that I can leverage. And like for our team, it was an ad roll because it was giving me the keyword insights in regards to intent searches that these accounts are having. It's allowing me to target them based off of, engagement stages and pull, integrate with Salesforce and HubSpot and those type of things. So I'm going to look at like the bare minimum to find that right fit. And maybe one day you can level up, but don't feel like you can't do it because you can't have the most shiny tool out there. You can find kind of that right tool that'll help you get started in it.
Yeah. So, and what sort of intent is it? Do it include third-party intent like Bombora or anything like that?
Yes. So Admiral does use Bombora. So they have their own intent data, and then they're also integrating that. And then we also use other tools, whether that be, I've used Zoom Info and integrated that. So I can pull in from different places as well. I just liked how easy it was to use. Also easy to train my sales team so they'll actually use it. Love you, sales team. But I want to make sure that it's easy into their workflow as well, because I truly believe for a right size ABM, you have to have your sales team included as well.
Yeah. Well, let's get on to that. So, there's a thing that everybody says, it's all become a cliche, which is unless you have good sales and marketing alignment, or basically sales alignment, ABM is not going to work. And I think that's true to a certain extent, although we've worked with companies who just said, look, we don't have to have sales involved on a day-to-day basis. We'll handle it. They don't want to see an opportunity until it's ready. They don't really care on how it got there. And actually it's worked just fine. In fact, there's been, some really great case studies of how to do it well. But in general, I get that point. I'm curious, how do you handle that? How do you get sales involved?
Yeah. And I do think it depends on the types of accounts we're going after. So if I'm doing something a little bit more of a broader ABM, such as like all children's hospitals, that's a little bit broader, I am going to get sales involved in the beginning. And I want to have some conversations around some of those key accounts and what are those pain points. I'm going to use a lot of their insights to build that dedicated landing pages, those emails, those ads. I'm going to use those insights. But
and the list, right? I mean, they must have a stake in the target list.
Yes, but it doesn't have to be quite as intense as, say, maybe I'm going after 5 key accounts.
Right.
I need to have those really detailed conversations with sales. I am going to be, on my monthly one-on-ones with each rep. I'm going to be telling them, which accounts are engaging, what I'm seeing from them with the campaign, so that they can be doing that active follow-up. And again, it depends on your space. I've been in a couple different spaces in health tech. Right now, I'm in the space where we are targeting payers. And they told me in the interview process, and I was like, that, every payer is different. I was like, okay, yeah. And going from selling to hospitals and health systems to selling to payers, I was like, oh, wow, they are. So I have to really get in there with the sales team to understand, to make sure that messaging hits, because I can't really hit every single account with the same message. It really is going to fall flat. So it's that. And then just, making sure that they are getting the notifications to do the follow-up, because it doesn't help if I send them a hot account and then nothing, they don't go anywhere with it. They got to be, following up right away.
So I'm curious, how often do you report to them or have a one-on-one with them? And when those meetings, what do you share with them?
Yeah. So I do a monthly one-on-one with each of our sales reps, as well as our marketing team as a whole has a marketing monthly call where we share kind of more high level initiative, product launches, things like that. But on the one-to-ones, I am sitting down. I've built dashboards for each of them that is showing their engagement at their accounts across our campaigns, both at like an account level and a known contact level, so that they can actually get in there. So I can say, hey, we ran campaign X and I got these 3 clicks. They get that information in other ways as well, but it's just helpful for me to go in and reinforce like, hey, this is what's happening at your accounts from a marketing standpoint. We're seeing a lot of activity. And then I'll also update them on whether new campaigns are coming so that they can start thinking about accounts they might want to include in those campaigns outside of what I've been thinking. And then I also try to get any feedback from them on conversations that they're having to help me plan out future campaigns as well.
That's great. I mean, that's a very engaged sales and marketing collaboration. I mean, that's excellent, because a lot of companies you see it's not like that. The salespeople, don't want to see that level of information. And I've been guilty of this, is making the rookie error of, you get intent data and it's like, oh my God, this is the first, and this is like 4 or 5 years ago, the first time we were playing around with some Bombora data. This is magic. And you give it to the salespeople, like, wow, well, this is incredible. What do I do with it? This account seems to be really interested. You should go call them. And then I call them. I said, I can't get hold of anybody. Nobody seems to want to talk to us. And the best we could get to was, I've never done that again, but the best we could get to was, okay, we got them on the phone and they did seem a bit more engaged than the average one, but it's like they weren't, it wasn't like they were suddenly saying, attention vendors, were ready to buy. It's not like that.
And I think in that aspect, which I definitely get, like when I send MQLs over, was it truly qualified? Like I need to be looking at those conversion rates, and then also just having the conversations of like, what are the average number of outreaches when I send, an MQL over? Because I know that you have to do a lot more follow-up than probably sales may think that they need to do. Because I'm like thinking about how many emails you get, how many you actually end up replying to, or calls. But also taking that information and I try not to get defensive. I'm like, hey, is that not working? Because that means I need to go in and I need to adjust something. I'm sending them to you too soon. Mm-hmm. What do I need to do on my side to get them to the next step that they're actually ready to talk to you? Whether that be like some automated nurturing, or, make sure that maybe I up my lead scoring threshold, that they need to, download 5 instead of 3 pieces of content, something, so looking at it that way as well. And I think just letting them know that like I'm taking their information and I'm actually using it. I'm not just writing it down and, getting rid of that notebook at some point.
I'm going to ask a delicate question, but I was having this conversation with somebody the other day about this. And so it's kind of fresh in my mind. And it's how much attribution or credit sales will give the marketing activities that have gone on in a deal. And it's so hard. It's acute in our industry where sales cycles are average 13 months, but in payers, it's even longer than that. Yeah. And so I'm curious, it sounds like you've got a good collaboration. Does marketing get credit for?
We do. We get, and that's something we are measured on our marketing influence of pipeline, marketing source of pipeline. Right. And I've experienced different relationships with that over the years, different companies. Some are like, oh, I don't want marketing credit. I'm like, I think that is a little bit from leadership. We have really great leadership of like, it is more of a team effort. It's definitely viewed as that. So like, marketing, sales, solutions, we all live in the growth team. So it doesn't feel at Cohere like we're fighting against each other in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
We're very much all working together, but I know that's not at every company.
It's not everyone's organization.
I kind of take it as an approach of like, I'm learning. I'm trying to figure out what works for me to get you the perfect account at the right time. Like, it's not about me getting credit for the pipeline. I just have to understand what's working and what's not. And maybe from that perspective, it still gives sales that ownership. I'm like, I don't get any, commission. Like, you do your thing. I don't want to be sales. So
you're fortunate. I'm not sure how many organizations can say that. I tell you, I had an opportunity with a client last year, and what they were able to do was, for the first time, they were able to take a deal that closed. It was a really big deal, and actually show to the sales team and the C-suite, here's the deal getting closed. Here's the chronology of their interactions. So actually, and they were able to show, hey, we reached out to them 18 months ago, just SDRs reached out to them and they said, leave us alone. We're good. And then we included them about 9 months later in a digital advertising campaign, and they were high engaged. We did some follow-ups with the SDRs, and they took a meeting, and then they scheduled a meeting at HIMSS, and then, and it was great. Everybody said, yeah, this is the way it's supposed to work. Well, the wonderful moment where everything just went, and this was a great moment for the head of marketing, was that the CFO said, yeah, it's really clear the contribution marketing is making to growing the pipeline. And that's when that happens in an organization that hasn't really operated like that before. That's a big moment. That's a big deal.
No, it definitely is. And I've done similar things, especially like sales and marketing kickoffs for the year of my last company. We each rep, we picked an account that like closed one in the last year. And then we went through and we kind of like during marketing's portion of sales and marketing kickoff, we looked at some of those with everybody and said, like, these are the things that they're looking at. These are the things they're engaging with. And some of that might be manual depending on how everything is set up in your system. So it might be a little bit of a deep dive. I mean, right now we're currently in this process of building a amazing like back end that's going to be able to show this amazing attribution. Right now, I'm still a little bit in the weeds with a little bit of manual stuff. But I mean, I think it's worth the investment to get that place, to be able to show that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because then you can then use that to say, emulate. So, okay, this is what a deal looks like. How do we make sure that we see this pattern emerging, that we recognize this early? Let's go back and get tactical again. I mean, you've talked in your sort of some of the things that you've written about, you're writing as that ABM as an orchestrator, not as a standalone tactic. So explain that a bit and then explain how you do that, particularly from in terms of messaging and tactics.
Yes. So it is a lot of moving parts. I think sometimes, again, with ABM, it's viewed as maybe it's just ads or that are targeting specific accounts, but it really is very much multi-channel. And I like an orchestra. Like I am making sure that I have all the components. So I'm going to have ads, but I'm going to have ads by different engagement levels for those accounts. And that's where I'm kind of using usually a combination of like an ad roll for some targeting there, as well as LinkedIn advertising, Google ads. I'm having that dedicated landing page. I'm having the sales resources, all of whether it's email templates or even presentation decks, whatever they need there, additional blog posts. So it is, again, we may not be recreating all of these. Some of these we might be using, but I'm having to pull all of that together to make sure that it's all ready for launch and running at the exact same time. But at the same time, also on the back end, making sure you set up everything correctly. What, like whether it's your campaign in HubSpot or your, the campaign field in Salesforce or whatever tool that you're using for my tracking purposes, so that I know that everything is, moving and getting recorded correctly. So I think it is a lot of moving parts. It's not a single, it's not a one-off email. It's not something that runs for 2 weeks. An ABM campaign is, especially in the health tech space, is going to be running for at least a quarter, if not more. It is it's the long game there. Yeah. You're not trying to move someone from awareness to closed super fast. I'm trying to get someone aware and in the pipeline, or maybe if they're in the pipeline, I'm just trying to get them to the next stage.
And what are the stages? I mean, how do you track progression through a buyer journey?
So I'm definitely looking at the completely unengaged or unaware stage, however you want to phrase that. And that's going to be people, they're really not visiting our website. They're not interacting with our emails. We're getting nothing there. And then I'm moving them into an engaged stage. And that is not, just engaged does not mean they're ready for sales in my mind. That just means they're visiting our website. Yep. They're starting to download things or attend webinars or things like that. And then they need to reach a certain threshold. So we use a combination of individual contact level information, whether demographics, engagements, as well as account level information. Since I may not, people may be visiting our website from an account, but I don't know who it is exactly. So if I see a high increase in account level engagement, and then say the contact reaches, has a certain job title or engagement as well, I'm using both of those in my lead scoring to then bring them up into what I consider a qualified lead for my sales team. Yeah. And then that's kind of, as they move forward, it's much more in the space I'm in right now. Sales really takes it and runs with it. At that point, marketing can help. But in previous ones, we did have I did have automated nurturing then set up to help move them from MQL to SQL. But it was just a slightly different space.
And is other SDRs involved in Cohere?
Yes. So we do have some SDRs. It's a little different of a setup than like a previous, one SDR to one sales rep that I've had at some other companies, that they are helping out with that. For us, because payers are so different, it just kind of depends on the account where that lead would go to.
Are they involved on the front end for prospecting, or are they involved at all sort of later on, like, hey, we've got this account, it's highly engaged, we're trying to move it or we've got a certain account, which is an MQL, we're trying to get them converted. Now, go ahead and reach out and see if we can turn them qualified. Do they get involved at that stage as well?
Sometimes. Again, it kind of depends on the account because they're so different, but they may do some, definitely the front end, trying to get some engagement there. And then if there's need to help build the account out in our system. So maybe we've got like one contact, but we need to get into some other doors as well. I find that they're really helpful at that, of just, allowing the sales reps to focus on some of those more strategic conversations while they help us whether build the database or just get some other engagement outside of our marketing efforts at our target accounts.
So I got to ask you the mandatory question on all podcasts now, which is, where does AI fit into all this?
Yes, the big question. So I think that there's a couple different things. There's AI tools like HubSpot Breeze that is really nice at quickly.
Is that working well?
What I like for is to summarize the engagement across an account or a contact at a quick view. I found it does a really good job at that.
Great.
In regards to, if someone asks, what's this account up to? I can quickly just go to their record and see what's been going on with the account and the contacts. I haven't found a lot of success with using their AI tool for like building reports. I tried to do that and that didn't well, and I gave up. So using it a bit that way, I think as a marketer, we're using AI for like, understanding data and things like that. I love it from the generative perspective for content, but you have to be super strategic with it. And that's where I like a tool like Jasper, which we used at my last company, and we'll see, maybe I'll get it here too. But why I like it compared to like a ChatGPT or something, which you can do personalization, it takes a lot of building out, is all the brand guidelines that Jasper had, like I'm building and each of the individual personas and each of the products, and just building this amazing knowledge base that it's using to understand and write your content, and having different brand voices as well that a team can leverage. And also it was super secure, which, as we know in health tech, having an AI that is locked down and is not sharing your information outside of it was one of the reasons I liked the tool. But it was great. Like a sales team member could go in and be like, hey, could you write an email to a CIO about this product and all that? And I've already built the whole back end of Jasper to have all the information it needs to write it and make sure that no one is saying anything that they shouldn't be saying. So, and just for the amount of things that we need to get done on shorter timelines, a tool like that is super, super helpful.
That's great. That's really, really cool. All right. Last question. So if you were to give the community, folks like you, one piece of advice, what would that be?
I think it would be to don't forget about the basics that we learn. And maybe that comes from me being an adjunct professor, but it also actually comes from a lot of conversations I've had with marketers over the last year at different conferences. With the rise of AI, which is super exciting and makes us very, very efficient, we cannot forget about the core parts of marketing, like our value propositions, understanding our personas. Like that basis is what you need in order to leverage those awesome AI, ABM, whatever tools, because if you don't have that in place, those are not going to work the right way. So I think don't forget the basics of marketing that we learned in school or in real life.
I love that. I think particularly in these days, actually it was interesting, at the end of last year, you took part in it. We did a predictions episode and you had some very smart things to say. But there was one person who talked about how, as a kind of a reaction against AI, a lot of people are really missing the in-person connections. And so I think there's a general feeling that events, particularly the smaller events, are going to do really well out of this. So that's going back to basics, right? Because it's going back to human connection. Yeah.
Yes, that is it. If you can get that right, then leveraging those tools is just going to make you skyrocket in your performance.
Brianna, you write so many smart things about ABM and, you're a great speaker on this. And it's been such a pleasure having the show. I've learned a lot listening to you. And I know anybody listening to this who's, whether they know anything about ABM or they're thinking about doing ABM, it's going to be really helpful to them. So thank you. I really appreciate it.
Fantastic. That's my goal. I love to share my knowledge.
Wow, what a great conversation with Brianna. She really didn't disappoint. So if you're thinking about doing ABM in healthcare technology, or you're kind of reevaluating your strategies, I've got 4 takeaways for you. First of all, ABM doesn't have to be one-to-one to work effectively. In healthcare's long sales cycles, where you've got multiple stakeholders, one-to-few strategies, or even one-to-many strategies, are actually often more realistic and can be more effective. Second, don't over-engineer it. You don't need to reinvent the wheel with every campaign. You don't need to go out and create tons of new content for every campaign. By thoughtfully packaging the best of the best of your existing content into focused resource hubs that curate the experience for the buyers, it can drive really serious engagement. And as I think Brianna explained, you can tell that the buyer's engaged based on the time that they're spending on those pages. Number 3, the old issue in ABM, sales alignment is absolutely critical, but it doesn't have to be perfect. Regular communication, shared visibility into account engagement, and simple workflows can go a long way to building trust between sales and marketing. And last but not least, don't forget the basics. You need clear value propositions. You need strong personas. You need to really understand your buyers, what matters to them. And that's absolutely critical. And it's more important, frankly, than any tool or platform. So huge thank you again to Brianna for sharing her experience and her practical insights. And thank you to Healthcare Now Radio for supporting the show. If you found this episode helpful, make sure you're subscribed to the Health Tech Marketing Show on whatever your favorite podcast app is or on YouTube. And a quick rating or review really helps people to find us. So please do that. It mean a lot to me if you would, frankly. And if you know somebody else in your network, a peer, a colleague who might find this useful, maybe they're thinking about doing ABM, why don't you send it to them? I think they'll find Brianna's advice really, really useful. And as always, if you'd like to have a conversation about ABM, about AI, about go-to-market strategy, about brand, about messaging, about anything in the wonderful world of healthcare technology marketing, you can book a call with me down below. It doesn't have to be a sales call. It doesn't have to be, about hiring Health Launchpad. Happy to have a chat about whatever your challenges are. Thank you for listening and see you on the next one.